Welcome to Beneath the Page, the podcast about books and the writers behind them. And this is part 2 of our interview with Paula Harmon. We start off asking her more about The Incomer, her werewolf fantasy.
In the Highlands of Scotland, a young woman who's moved there with her brother, basically to hide him away. He's become a werewolf. The shapeshifter is not human, but somehow she's more human than everybody else, and she teaches Rose what it is to be a human.
There's one very powerful scene where a shape-shifting wolf character, I'm trying to avoid using names so that I don't plot spoil for anyone who's not read the books yet, but this wolf character asks Rose how to live as a human female. It occurred to me that a wolf who shapeshifts and becomes human is a great literary device for examining the human condition. What was it in particular that you wanted to explore about the female experience in that relationship?
That scene actually got rewritten a few times, because I think what I was really initially trying to do was say, it's relatively simple being a wolf. I mean, I don't know, but theoretically,
you've not had the personal experience.
Theoretically, relatively simple. It's actually quite complex to be, a modern Western woman. And then I started thinking about it, and time moved on, and sort of, as I say, because it was written quite a while ago, and sort of society's attitudes and ideas started to change, and so I thought this is not quite such a simple conversation. So I sort of mentioned about periods, for example, and it suddenly occurred to me, well, not every, I know women who haven't had periods, who were, born female and are still female, but didn't for whatever reason. And I thought, well, you can't use that necessarily as a defining factor. And then I looked at it a bit, thought, well, then there are people who identify as female who weren't born female. And I thought, and I actually ran this past somebody transgender to say, this book is not about that at all. But it is about this defining moment, somebody trying to unpick for herself, what is it to be female? And if you were reading this, would you feel included? And they said yes. I know the book's not about, you could go in, and I said no, I'm not, that's not what the book is about. But I think also for the other thing I wanted to get across, which is also part of the same argument really, is that to be female, it is a spectrum in my view. So I like wearing dresses, I like doing my hair, couldn't care less about handbags. I can't do my hair. It's always a bit of a mess. Not very good at makeup either. There are elements of, I was good at maths as well as English. I sort of but some of the female trends. Couldn't talk about soap operas or pop stars saved my life when I was a teenager. Absolutely out of the loop on that front. So I know that I'm little bits. If you had sort of like a very girly girl and a quite a masculine woman at the other end, I'm all over the place, And I think that is true for Rose, and I think perhaps she's never thought about it, but she thought, well, actually I'm good at this, I'm not good at that, I'm never been the kind of girl that goes out with loads of other girls and has a cup of coffee on a Thursday morning. I have had close friends, which is like me, I suppose, and it's just like, well, I'm not like her, but we're both women, and it's just trying to unpick the fact that actually at the end of the day you're just a human being.
Yes.
And so I rewrote that a few times to try and get over the fact that she's trying to think, more than anything else, I'm a very confused human.
Yes.
But I just happen to have periods as well. So.
Rose does say at one point when the wolf character makes a comment about him, she'll say she's gradually realising that being human is a ridiculous thing.
Yes.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
You mentioned how the experience has changed in our time. It's a question that you tackle as well in the Margaret Demeray books, which of course are in a very, very different time setting.
And no wolves.
And no wolves. Well, I've only read the first one, so no wolves yet.
Yeah.
But the first one is set in 1910, and the movement towards women's suffrage features a lot. I mean, how did that very different historical setting change what you felt you had to say on on that subject?
Margaret was a minor character in another book that I wrote with somebody else, and she sort of said, I want a series of my own, so I wrote a series of her own. And I just thought this particular era was very interesting.
Yes.
It's the lead up to World War One. The women's suffrage movement is moving.
Mm-hmm.
There was quite a significant event that happened in 1910, although it's not mentioned in that book because it happens after that ends. It is mentioned in one of the later books, at which point the suffragette movement became more militant, almost in a direct consequence.
And there's hints of that in
Yes, there are, yeah. So it's a massive period of social change, and everybody tends to think of the 1910s leading up to World War One in sort of Titanic terms, beautiful dresses, lots of elegance, loads of money. But there was a huge amount of social unrest. There was still massive poverty. Like we said, something like 1% of the British population owned 90% of everything.
The welfare state wasn't really a thing.
No, it
and
was
people were
just
dependent on
the workhouse and I mean the old age pension had been brought in. I think some kind of sick pay, some description had been brought in. I can't remember now, but it was something like that. So things were trying to, but they weren't changing fast enough, and there were loads of strikes. There was a great deal of misery. She works in a London hospital for the poor, and she's got a very good social conscience, which is why she ends up getting caught up in what she gets caught up in. But I was also just very fascinated by the women of that era.
Yes.
Me
too.
My grandmothers and my great aunts were all born at the beginning of the 20th century or the very, very end of the 19th. So they were younger than Margaret, but they still had that very Edwardian attitude, and they were just very straight talking, and if something needs doing, it is going to get done and you're not going to argue with me, that sort of person. And of course most of them were frustrated because they'd had to give up careers when they got married. So I was aware that they had all these strong women, and one of the questions I was once asked was, why do you write about women in the Victorian Edwardian era? Because women didn't do anything, and they did masses of things. Huge amounts of social change was directly a result of women's activity, and all the things that people think, Victorians, you couldn't talk about sex and they didn't do it. It was the suffrage. They had about trafficking. They had about the sexual abuse of children and girls and young women, and they campaigned for it, and when they brought in laws, they said this is not good enough because all you're doing is still tackling the girls, you're not tackling the men. And they were campaigners, and I just think they deserve a bit of a voice. So she's she's part of that. Although it's still a murder mystery. There's still murder mysteries, so
Yes.
But I really like that about her character, and seeing how someone like her, who is wanting to improve things for people, can be seen as a bit of an interfering do-gooder by some of the people she's trying to help, as well as the people who don't need any help and don't really want to change anything.
Yeah, and she's from a comfortable middle class home. She's not rich. She's comfortable, but she has this urge to change things, and as the series unfolds, she meets more people. The Taylor strike happens, the suffrage campaign gets, as I say, gets more violent, and she still gets involved in people and trying to change it. But I think that's realistic, that sometimes the people who you're trying to help will just think, you're going home to your nice comfortable house and having a nice comfortable meal, which she's very aware of. And also sometimes just she's a woman and in a man's world. So
going back to the incomer, there's one aspect of human society that the Wolves really do admire, and that's music. And one of the things that struck me is that for Rose, her most meaningful connections with the community and with other people come from playing music with others. I just wondered, what is it that you feel that music and the arts more broadly gives to a sense of community?
Talking about music, I'm not myself particularly musical. I was part of a number of choirs over the years, and a singing group at one point, and what I really loved was being in the middle of something that created something so beautiful, as a collaborative act. So I was never a soloist or anything like that. I was very much in the middle of the whatever, I can't remember what it was now, high alto or something. But all together you made this noise, and it was a lovely noise, and it would make people stop. My son is a musician, went to a number of the gigs that he did with his friends and some of his other things that he's done, and again, to be able to make everybody stop what they're doing and tap into something.
Yes.
And I think you know as well, just music generally, particularly if you pick an era, especially if somebody was a teenager, late teenager, when that music was on the radio, even if it's music they didn't like, it will tap them straight back into the whole era. And the mood that they felt at the time will suddenly just come flooding back. So there is something about music that does transcend all of your you might not agree with somebody on anything else, but you might both love the same piece of music. It doesn't have to be popular, it could be anything. With art, as in paintings, drawings and so on and so forth, I think it's similar but not quite the same, because generally speaking art is a solitary act. Somebody's sort of putting their whatever is inside them onto a piece of paper or into a sculpture or whatever, and then it's interpreted by the viewers. But again, it's a sort of a joint thing.
And that's true of writing as well, of course. Yes,
it's the same with writing, which is also a very solitary thing. And obviously the reception may be different. So with music, generally speaking, there will be a group of people who love it and they all love it, and there will be a group of people who are indifferent and a group of people absolutely hate it. And with art, it's, again, an individual reaction. I think I found eventually my tribe among other writers.
Yes.
And with art, not even going to pretend about music, as I say, but with art, I like dabbling in art. I'm not an artist, but I do like dabbling in it. And I was friends with another writer, and we both challenged each other to start just trying a bit harder with her art. And she's now doing really, really well from a position where she thought, I can't do this, and she can.
I mean, I'd challenge the statement that you're not an artist. Because if you practice art, if you spend time doing it, you are an artist. You may not be a professional artist, but you're still
more
an
of an artist than a musician. That's what's it.
And for your main characters, both Rose in The Incomer and Margaret in your historical novels, they both use art for themselves, don't they?
They do. I mean, Rose is a musician by profession. She just hasn't done it for a long time. But and at the beginning of the book, she starts playing the cello again because she's trying to process. She's realised she cannot process everything that's going through her, and she starts to find an outlet. And I think that a lot of artists do that anyway. I believe that it's something that anybody can do. You don't have to think, I am an artist, a musician, a writer. You don't. Margaret Demeray, she's a pathologist, so she would have been trained at a time when she would have had to have done intricate drawings as part of her training. But sketching is also her hobby. So when she's just wants to relax, she'll do a bit of sketching. But it also helps her to process her thoughts and her ideas. So she quite often starts sketching as she's trying to work out what has happened, and through that process will think, because she's letting a part of her mind just go onto the paper. Her father, who is sort of loosely based on my dad, but only with more money, he and more freedom. He's a writer, wildly imaginative. He was a travel writer when he was young, and then he just becomes a writer later on. And his love of books is something that comes through in the later books of the series, about how much he loves them, how much his world it revolves around books and writing, sometimes to the detriment of his family, because he's another slightly obsessed person, but a loving one. So I think all of my characters have something that they can do. And like I said, I'm not a musician, but I understand how that would help. I wish I could play the piano. One day I'll learn beyond.
The parts with Rose talking about music read like they were written by someone with a quite deep understanding of that.
I did run them. My son's a musician, and I did run them past various people to check that I got it right. But going back to what I said earlier, that I think that any form of art is of value to anybody, and I think that if we as adults you tend to think, it's what I do's got to be perfect. If I play a piece of, I play a piece on the piano, it's just all wrong, or I draw something, it doesn't look like anything, or I write something, that's just rubbish and I can't spell. But if you took yourself back to what you were like when you were 4 or 5 and somebody gave you a piece of paper or a recorder or a triangle, which I think is what I got landed, but you just did it, and you didn't judge yourself.
No.
Yeah.
You didn't judge yourself any more than you worried about how you walked or how you ran. You just did it, and you just let, you do your little swirl, and you'd say, that's mummy, and everybody would be going,
isn't that brilliant?
But maybe she looks like that, but maybe she doesn't. And I think that to do that, sometimes you can tap into the bits of yourself that you otherwise can't express. And that sounds very deep, but I don't think it has to be. I think you literally, one of the things that I did when I was talking about my dad dying, when he was dying, I wrote down some of the things that we were experiencing as if I was looking at it, as if I was looking at happening to another person. And that was actually quite cathartic.
Yes.
They're quite short. They're very, very short little bits of sort of like I'm watching myself lying in the pull-up bed at my mother's house waiting for a phone call from the hospital, that sort of thing, and just watching it. That ultimately became part of a book that I wrote about Dad. And they sound sad, but they sort of work. Some of them are quite funny because there's always something really stupid that happens, and it became part of another thing. But it was a cathartic process to do that. And same with painting. Although I don't think of myself as an artist, I do sit down and enjoy it, and I just give myself the freedom of, here's a pencil and a piece of paper, and I'll just scribble down whatever I feel like, or I've got some paints and I'm just going to make an almighty mess, but I'm just going to do it. And sometimes after you've done it for a few minutes, you just think, do you know what, I just feel better. I don't know why, I just feel better. So
you mentioned earlier about finding your tribe of creative people, and that leads me on to the next question, which is, you are one of the organisers of the Blandford Literary Festival. Can you tell us what is your role within the Blandford Festival, and how did you get involved in that?
Chiefly is I manage the website, is chiefly what I do, but not entirely on my own. And to be honest, the core committee, for want of a better word, which is me, Finola Brennan, Nat Woodfox and Zara McInwendy, we work together. If somebody can't do something, somebody else will. Yeah. So it's very difficult to sort of say which one of us does what precisely, although we do sort of have things that we hold on to. We all do little bits of everything, and then we've got other people involved too. How did I get involved? It really started the conversation in the pub, as most good things do.
Most of the best ideas.
I used to, we had a writers group in Blandford, and one of the other members called Louise and I, we would meet and we would share out the things that we were writing and discuss them. And then she said one day, do you know what, I've always had this dream that we would have a literary festival in Blandford, but that it wouldn't be all highbrow and absolutely top names, not there's anything wrong with top names or highbrow stuff at all, but that it would also showcase independent writers, people hadn't maybe heard of, emerging writers, writers who haven't actually started yet but just want a bit of inspiration. We'd have workshops. So this is what she wanted to do. She was working very closely with Finn at the time, and we got together, and then other people joined in, and eventually we did the 2019 festival, which was a week long and went really well, and we thought, we'll do another one next year. So it took us a little while to get sort of like the ball rolling again after COVID, and restrictions meant that we couldn't really have meetings, so we did a little thing in 2022 on a festival in a day, and then we did the main festival last year, so we're doing another one this year.
Well, this year's festival runs from the 14th to the 16th of November. What are some of the highlights that people can look forward to?
Obviously, Steve.
Oh, you're too kind. Yes, I was invited along to last year's festival, and it's a brilliant event. I loved it. And you've invited me back, which is frankly amazing. But yes, I'm looking for that. But other than
what we aim to do is have a wide variety of different sort of authors of different genres, and also workshops. So if you were somebody who wanted to explore your creativity, that they would be that too. So you've got a mixture of the both.
Could you give the name of the website where they can?
The website is called www.blandfordlit.org. Blandford Literary Festival.co.uk. And all the information about tickets will be on there.
So where can people find you online?
Okay, so I'm at www.paulaharmon.com. That's Harmon with an O, not an A. I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, which I don't go on very often. But you can buy my books. My ebooks are in, most of them are on Amazon, but some of them are wide. My audio, some of my books are in audio. Those are, when I say wide, that you can get them at various different outlets. My paperbacks you can either buy from Amazon or you could order through a bookshop.
Marvellous. Well, thank you so much,
Okay.
Paula. We've had a lot of fun talking about wolves and other related matters. Thank you
very much. Thank you for having me.
Fascinating to hear how much Paula had moved around,
Yes.
especially when she was younger, and how that sense of being an outsider fed into the writing of The Incomer.
Did you move around a lot as a child?
Not as a child. We moved once when I was a child, and it was literally to 5 minutes away. But then as a young adult, I did move around a lot. A couple of years here, a couple of years there, and before pitching up in Bournemouth about 25 years ago.
I counted how many places I'd lived. I think this is the longest I've ever lived anywhere, and I've lived here for 11 years. But before that, I'd never lived in a place for more than 5.5. So I really understood what she meant. The thing that really, she reminded me about reinventing yourself every time you move. I'd forgotten the advantage of that. It must be so difficult for people who everybody's known them from a child with all their embarrassments.
It's like the people who become famous as children and then have to grow up in public.
Yes. It must
but on
be
a smaller scale.
It must be so difficult. So no, I'm now a little bit more grateful for my life than I was before the interview. Thank you very much for joining us. We hope you've enjoyed it. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.